Sex, Murder, and Killer Cupcakes by Allison Janda. Chapter 1. I attribute my fascination with photography to the fifth grade. The internet was brand spanking new, and Miss Cunningham, my science teacher, was determined to educate our class using this new tool, despite knowing nothing about it herself. The assignment: research and write a report about your favorite animal. Now, at the time, I had just returned from a vacation to SeaWorld and felt that my calling was to work with whales. You haven't lived until you're 11 and searching the internet for information about blowholes. Suffice it to say, Miss Cunningham was among the first to advocate for internet restrictions in schools. Then there's my parents. They're both former hippies. According to my aunt, both mom and dad began losing their copacetic attitudes somewhere around the birth of my brother. All my young life, they were wildly protective parents. So protective, in fact, that my dad, who I've never known to sleep without a gun under his pillow, decided to earn his police badge as soon as he found out my mother was pregnant with their first bouncing bundle of joy. Suffice it to say, my brother and I were raised in a typical small-town Midwestern bubble, made all the tighter when Miss Cunningham called my parents, on the verge of hysteria, tripping over herself with apologies regarding the subject matter I'd recently researched. She was never able to make eye contact with Mom and Dad again. My name is Marian Moyer. I can't say that the experience in fifth grade scarred me. If you ask my parents the same question, they would probably disagree. I will say that the experience turned me on both literally. I will say that the experience turned me on both literally and figuratively to a whole new mindset. And I became fascinated with photographs as pieces of art. I studied their every aspect: the light, the dark, the shadow, the subjects themselves. I pored over any photos that I could get my hands on. This included my older brother's porn collection, kept hidden in the back of his closet behind the swell of hockey gear. When I couldn't talk my parents into purchasing me a camera that Christmas, I took up drawing instead, not wanting to forget a single detail of my surroundings. Trees, cars, people on the street. I became a modern-day Picasso with a rapidly growing chest. My poor mother, on the brink of madness with my constant need to doodle, thereby making us late for everything, finally gave in and purchased me a second-hand point-and-shoot camera in middle school. By high school, I was even more obsessed with photography, learning film development and the art of catching just the right angle. Additionally, I was growing ever more fond of my desserts and crime-related television. By college, I was majoring in criminal investigation, minoring in photography, and working the cash register for a hole-in-the-wall bakery that turned out the most incredible donuts. My freshman 15 was more like the freshman 30. In addition to weight gain, I was also harboring a not-so-secret crush on a sophomore by the name of James Holden. Flattered, by which I mean creeped out, by my constant gawking while he worked his desk job in the student union, James finally asked me on a date. Kabuki was a popular sushi restaurant in downtown Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I lived. While I'd never tried sushi before, I was well aware of what it could look like, having seen trays of it in the ready-to-go section in the grocery store. Combine the beautiful texture of sushi with my beautiful date, and my mind went into overdrive with all the photographic opportunities that were right in front of me. Tucking my digital camera into my purse on my way out of the dorm room was a last-minute decision and one I've never regretted. Was it weird to start taking photographs of our meal on a first date with an actual camera? Sure, but it was the early 2000s, and I'd never given much thought to my weirdness. And while my camera was initially pointed at the crisp white plate drizzled in a rich, dark sauce, I slowly found the lens following the line of James's lightly tanned hand, the curve of his muscular jawline, the shadow of a light-colored 5 o'clock stubble that dotted his upper lip and chin, far more facial hair than any normal-looking 20-year-old had the right to have. becoming aroused in a way that even my brother's porn collection had never produced. I found myself fighting the urge to remove my blouse and lie flat across our table, hoping my body would draw a similar reaction from James's sushi. But let's fast forward through the heavy awkwardness created by my taking photos on a pity date. But let's fast forward through the heavy awkwardness created by taking photos on a pity date. It resulted in me being left hot, bothered, and dateless in front of Dorm C. Still, I held in my hand a camera full of gorgeous photos that any food critic would be proud of. Well, food critics who could appreciate the art of outdated digital technology. After some dramatic inner After some dramatic inner monologue, which I won't bore you with, I came up with an idea. I created an underground print publication focused on my love of both dessert and beautiful people. Pushing James, but not the erotic reaction I'd had at dinner, from my mind, I threw myself into the creative process. All the spare time and socially awkward experiences most young adults suffer through in college didn't exist for me. My best friend Addison tells me that it stunted my emotional growth. My first kiss came well after graduation, but it sure has led to a hell of a career path. By my own sophomore year, more sexually frustrated than a baseball fanatic's wife during a losing season, but 20 pounds lighter, I'd collected enough eye-popping photographs of various foods held by beautiful people around the city, with their full consent, thank you very much, to begin my underground publication, Foodtopia, where food was never the lone subject of any photograph. Despite my blowhole research, my brother's porn collection, and my own sexual frustration, you can rest assured that all of my subjects were fully clothed. Hello, I was 20. By my junior year of college, I'd formed a bit of a cult following for Foodtopia, which I slipped into copies of the student paper after hours. By the time I graduated, I decided that I wanted to let my inner freak flag fly with the publication and post it citywide, but wasn't quite sure how to manage it in that sweet Midwestern girl kind of way. Enter James Holden. 3 years had passed, and the only thing that hadn't changed was his magnetism. Fate, the saucy minx, had him waiting for coffee next door to the yoga studio I attended one afternoon. His dark green eyes took in my bright spandex pants and slight flush from an overly vigorous power class. I never stood a chance. Age had increased his charm, a gym membership had increased his bulk, and I'm pretty sure that the dark roast he confessed to drinking religiously gave him some Amazonian jungle smell that can only be described as animalistic. Still, it was his eyes that captivated. Still, it was his eyes that captivated me the most. An emerald green, two raging storms of desire beneath his thick reddish-brown brows. One "it's on me" vanilla latte, and 20 minutes later, he was nuzzling my collarbone while I was shimmying out of my yoga pants in the back of his black Honda Civic. Undeterred by the seatbelt fastener digging into my back, the following 30 minutes served as my exit from internet research and shoved me through the barriers toward womanhood. I'd never heard from James again after our fling. Stumbling from his back seat, however, I found that he'd again served as some kind of twisted muse. A few months later, I'd managed to turn Foodtopia, my fun, relaxed college-age publication, into food porn. It was still free and still turned out once a month, but now it was distributed throughout the city, featuring beautiful local models in barely there, if any, clothing, posing with delicious handheld morsels. So as to give it that sweet Midwestern spin, Addison, my best friend who'd majored in journalism, and I wrote up reviews of each bakery and restaurant we featured, making sure to sample as many of their dishes as they'd create for us. As such, we'd become both beloved and hated among the various chefs throughout Wisconsin and Illinois. The gig doesn't pay us much. Heck, it doesn't pay us anything. No, Addison and I keep it alive purely for the thrill. While Addison's day job is reporting for a major local paper, I moonlight as a crime scene photographer, rounding out that crazy list of passions I've clutched to my heart since adolescence. Today, food porn is the talk of the food critic town, and plenty more has changed since college. Addison's fierce appearance has taken her far in uncovering some major scandals around the city. Something about being 5'10" and looking eerily similar to Cameron Diaz made people want to talk to her about things. Go figure. Meanwhile, her sharp brains have kept her ahead of the ever-shrinking pool of what could be considered good reporting. She's a bit of a head case, but that's part of her charm. While she's freelanced plenty outside the city, I'm convinced that Milwaukee will always be her home. Meanwhile, I'm still a paltry 5'7" with pale skin, a bubble butt, and insane curls. I remain addicted to eating delicious dessert, reveling in real crime scenes, and taking my photographs. And while I'd like to tell you I outgrew that pesky fascination with dirty magazines, I own one in a sense, so I'd be lying, and we can't start our relationship out there. I'm still working to tame my insanely thick curls and figure out how an eyelash curler works. More unfortunate is that I'm still leading a much more boring personal life than all of my employment suggests. That said, had I known what was waiting for me, I think I would have embraced the boring and ordinary times with far more relish.